What if you woke up as a minor villain in your favorite dark fantasy novel? That's exactly what happened to Han, who has no magic or any social skills and a future that looks like a disaster waiting to happen. His only shot at survival is taming, a skill no one seems to take seriously. All he wants is to get through the academy in one piece. But can he actually change his fate, or is trouble just around the corner? Let's find out. Reincarnation is a gamble. You could end up as a cockroach crawling on the ground, but landing as a human is like hitting the jackpot, and our protagonist just hit it. After working himself to death in his past life, he finally gets a fresh start as a human again. He finds himself in the body of Hansa, a minor villain who gets killed in the first chapter from a dark novel he used to enjoy. Seeing the stats of this hopeless fool, our hero feels stuck in this doomed role and curses the roulette wheel for such a terrible choice. On top of that, his current setting is an auxiliary facility for dark mages, which worsens his reincarnation. Our hero can recall that Hana was once full of potential due to his natural magical abilities, but Ely excluded at Ardell Academy for his lack of practical skills. Now he is around some mysterious people who mention he's a student from Ardell Academy and wonder if he could be useful. Our hero remembers that was the unfortunate time when Hansa took interest in dark magicians and approached them. Just as our boy thought, one of the magicians finds him useful and tells him to follow along. As they walk, the magician asks if he knew how to join, which he said he did. Deep down, he was freaking out that killing a member and signing the oath for dark magic meant no going back. To make things worse, he knew the dark magician organization, including Han Sia, would be wiped out by the main character of the novel. He starts figuring out his escape plan. While he's stressing, a system prompt suddenly appears and warns him to get out immediately. Shocked by the unexpected outbreak, he freezes. A loud scream suddenly echoes through the facility. The magicians around him react and try to figure out what's happening in the basement, but give our boy a stern warning to stay put if he wants to live. As soon as they leave, he takes his chance and runs. He's running around without a clue where to go next, completely worn out. He stops and complains about being lost. Ahead, he notices a locked door and a soft light approaching. As he pauses, a deep voice of a dark mage startles him. He ducks down and catches two guys chatting about a kid who got away from the third basement floor. Once they leave, our hero checks out his surroundings and tries to get the locked door open. It's not moving at all, no matter what. In frustration, our hero remembers Hans's magical abilities. Our protagonist focuses, trying to channel his magic into his fingertips to break the lock. It doesn't work and leaves him drained and hopeless. Just as he thinks things can't get worse, he hears something approaching. He turns and braces for the worst, but sees a little dragon. The dragon grabs his robe, wanting to be picked up. Our boy scoops it up and tells the dragon straight out that he can't take care of it. The little guy cries like a baby, which is impossible to ignore, so he gives in and takes it along. He runs while muttering about the dragon doing this on purpose and knows he is not cut out for this. He stops and decides to try the dragon's power. As he stares, his system pops up and unlocks his taming ability, asking if he wants to tame the little dragon and showing its skills. It turns out the dragon has a flamethrower skill. When he sees that, he remembers some traits from his past life, but gets annoyed that there's no accept button on the system. He realizes he's going to have to tame the dragon just like Hansa did back in the novel. As he gets the hang of it, he realizes he has decent experience and skill in taming. Using hand gestures, he builds trust and puts the little dragon at ease, telling it to trust him. Though worried if he is doing it right, the dragon warms up and floats into the air. As the dragon lands, our hero doubts whether he really has it under control, but decides to put it to the test. He tells the dragon to break the door lock. The dragon charges forward without hesitation. It jumps and bites through the chain lock, snapping it like it's nothing. He is stunned. It was so easy. With the lock broken, they are ready to escape. He hears footsteps approaching and feels a bad vibe. When he glances back, the men spot him. Just as he's about to escape, caught and unsure what to do, he recalls a basic spell of smog from Ardell Academy, meant for hiding, but our boy has never tried before. With no options left, he takes a deep breath. He concentrates and imagines holding a gun as he channels energy into his fingertips and hopes the spell fills the cave with smoke. Thankfully it works, and he creates a small light at his fingertips. The magicians freeze for a moment while he quickly casts the spell, making a cloud of smoke wrap around them. Then he takes the chance to bolt for the door, but just as he's about to open it, a creepy ghost hand suddenly appears and grabs him by the neck. He's totally shocked and can't breathe as it chokes him, and he goes crashing to the ground. His pet rushes to his side as he wonders if this is the end. The magician sneers and says Han cannot escape and should be grateful for a painless painless death. As he lies there feeling defeated, he realizes how unfair it is to be brought back only to face death again. Just when all hope seems lost, he remembers one last trick. His pet clings to his robe as it senses his anxiety. He tells the dragon it must trust him if it wants to break free. He apologizes for his mistakes and asks for their help. The reptile spreads its wings and strides up to the spellcaster with a bold vibe and unleashes a massive burst of flames. The fire surrounds the guy and he screams in agony. The ghostly hand squeezing his neck vanishes and finally sets him free. Once the danger passes, the dragon returns to the boy. He didn't expect this outcome, but feels grateful to have such a reliable companion. Our boy tells the dragon he owes it his life and promises to care for it, but first, they need to escape. They trek through a scorching desert, searching for a cave to rest. Relieved to be free from the dark mages, our boy feels the heat and thirst wearing down. Even the dragon looks exhausted. As he vows to never let the mages catch him again, he spots a carriage and approaches the old driver, asking for a ride. The driver asks if he can pay. Without hesitation, our boy pulls a gold card from his pocket and asks if it's enough. The old man is surprised to see the card and recognizes it as one from Ardell Academy with special perks. After thinking for a moment, he agrees to let them ride. They thank him and settle into the carriage. As they get comfortable, the old man asks where they are headed. Our boy hesitates and realizes he ran without a plan. With dark mages likely after him, he decides his best option is Ardell Academy. It is a place where people might still want him dead, but it is perfect for laying low, just like in the novel he read. Our guy's adventure begins at Ardell Academy, where we meet Senen, who is a second-year assistant professor. She admires the marble floors and the elegant chandeliers and finds the student uniforms very classy. Her smile fades when she sees our hero arrive, covered in dust and looking worn out. Selene cannot believe someone so messy just walked into the spotless academy. She rolls her eyes and wonders how he even got in while he remains unaware of her annoyance. Silent is worried that this guy, who struggles to control his natural magical abilities, could mess up the Academy's reputation right on the first day of the semester. Meanwhile, Han is keeping his dragon hidden in his robe, but the little guy's getting restless and really wants to get out. Our boy figures out she must be a professor, so he asks if he is late, and she tells him he is. But she decides to brush him off as she remembers the rumors about Han C's strange obsession with black magic with life-size dolls, and thinks he is just trouble. So she merely tells our hero to hurry up and get inside. He thanks her and walks inside as she reflects on how her perspective has changed as a second-year professor. Once he's in the room, his classmates start whispering and gossiping about him being weird since he shows up in a carriage and looks poor. Boy tunes out all the noise around him, thinking he's probably on track to become that crazy villain everyone talks about. Sitting in the back, he catches bits of his classmates speculating that he must have gotten a leg up because a professor cut him some black. He can't help but wonder if his family paid someone off for his advancement, if a professor actually sees something in him, or if some magic tower wrote him a glowing recommendation. His main focus is staying alive in this dark fantasy world, using his skills to survive. He sets two goals, starting with finding a quiet hiding spot. As a low-tier villain known for being violent and clueless, he risks a terrible fate like being buried alive by the hero. With the academy closed for the year, he has time to figure things out. He doesn't know why he died, but it might involve unresolved issues or unknown crimes. He'd rather try and fail than face that dark future. His backup plan is to graduate and secure his future. His wealthy family cut ties with him due to his past, so finishing at the academy is his best shot at a stable life. He decides to lay low by avoiding the main character and steering clear of trouble. When the professor walks in, our boy recognizes him as Professor Grint from the magic department. The professor praises the second years for their work, noting how the top student raises the bar and makes things harder for him. With students aged 14 to 19, the academy is highly competitive and only 10% graduate with high honors. This makes our boy wonder how he can compete with the main character's crazy power in the black magic group. Since he just wants to live a chill life, it feels almost impossible. The professor suddenly says that anyone who doesn't meet the standards can't join his class. Han's taken aback when the professor gives him this serious look, almost like he's under a spotlight. The professor shares the exam schedule and taps his walking stick, summoning an announcement illusion. Our guy is amazed by the advanced magic of the spell. The display explains that after a year, he can choose 3 subjects for written and practical exams. He's impressed by the academy's magic and likes having a choice, but suspects it won't be as simple as it seems. The professor explains that only a few students can choose their subjects, and it will be on a first-come, first-served basis. He even offers to draw lots to decide the order. Our guy thinks it is unfair to leave his exam fate to chance. With no choice but to act quickly to save his grades, he feels like his luck ran out after dealing with those dark magicians. The professor takes out a ball and says that Han will be the first to choose. Our hero is caught off guard, feeling like maybe his luck isn't completely done for. He starts checking out the subjects and quickly realizes he should steer clear of anything too practical or linked to necromancy. As he scans the options, everything looks tough, and he's really struggling to make a choice. But then he spots one that stands out: exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas. At first it sounds super complicated, but he figures it's probably the easiest pick he's got. Plus, he knows he's decent at memorization, so he thinks he can handle it somehow. His friends talk about his subject choice and say arithmetic is the easiest option. They feel relieved he chose it since they are struggling. While they talk, he quickly selects his other two subjects. One of them seems manageable. He's studying quietly in the library, thinking back to his time as a vet intern. The subjects he chose remind him a lot of his veterinary science major. He starts with exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas, and realizes that the math here is totally different, as his old formulas might not cut it anymore. After wrapping that up, he grabs another book to work on. He's so focused on studying that he totally forgets his pet in his bag. Other students start to get suspicious when his dragon tries to wiggle out. He quickly shoves it back down to avoid getting noticed. His little buddy wants to come out and play, but he keeps it hidden to avoid trouble. Bringing it along might help, but it would only create more problems with the crowd around him. He decides to leave the library. Our hero knows dealing with magic, and taming a baby dragon would draw too much attention. After leaving the library, he heads to the underground training area at the academy. He tells his dragon it can run free, thinking it's a perfect chance to try out his taming skills since he's gotten the hang of the theory. When he asks the staff member at the training ground for a ticket to the beginner area, she looks surprised at his dragon and comments on him bringing a dragon to the newbie zone. When she asks for the name, he realizes he has not named his pet yet. He asks the dragon for its name, and it excitedly says Chime. He keeps thinking about a name, but the dragon gets annoyed because he does not understand. As he thinks, he suggests names like Drake and Charizard, thinking they are the coolest names ever. The dragon gets angry and signals it might roast him if he does not pick a good one. Seeing the reaction, he carefully picks a unique and fitting name and decides on Basilisk. Our hero notices that the dragon perks up when he hears the name Basilisk. The girl catches on and tells him the training area can fit 2 people, but there's already 1 person in the other room. Then she takes them to the weapon room and explains it's a rental service for students like them. Our hero thinks the weapons look pretty lame, probably because they're free, but he decides not to complain since he wants to get stronger and should just be thankful for what he gets. He picks out a shield and a wand stick. The girl leads them to the beginner practice area and opens the gate. Our hero feels a mix of emotions as entering this place looks like a peaceful garden, which leaves him a little amazed. While exploring, he notices a slime and thinks how even low-level monsters seem kind-hearted here, though he does not feel the same way. He asks Basil if he can see the slimes, and when the pet says he can, our boy decides he will blow them up. Basil is taken aback by his master's cold order, but knows he has no choice. He goes ahead and takes down the block slimes while his master watches. As Basil starts to enjoy himself, his master realizes his dragon instincts are kicking in. He mutters under his breath about how the scared little dragon is gone as Basil tears through them all. He decides to level up his skills. While he's wandering around, he hears some creepy sounds and suddenly gets attacked. He spins around and manages to defend himself just in time. The block slime monsters are back for payback, and he realizes he can't take them all on with how strong he is right now. But with Basil's plan in mind, he's confident he can take them out one by one. Our boy asks Basil if he's ready and suggests trying their classic move. Basil jumps in and blasts the monsters with his flamethrower, wiping them out quickly. Impressed by Basil's power, the boy says they need to keep training to level up. After hours of training, they lie on the ground, completely exhausted. The boy mentions how taming Basil and casting spells has left him drained. Seeing Basil focused on him, he promises to get him a tasty ret treat back at the dorm. Meanwhile, Basil snoozes peacefully nearby. The The boy notices something happening below and checks it out. He spots a student the girl mentioned earlier, training with her beast. The beast goofs around while the girl grows frustrated as it ignores her commands. While our guy watches, the girl tries to get her hellhound to behave. He thinks she's totally going about it all wrong and tells her she shouldn't be handling it that way. She's yelling at the beast to come back and sit, but it completely ignores her and takes off. She storms off to find her stubborn pet and grum that it's going to regret being caught. As she's searching, she notices that her wild beast has calmed down and is now sitting quietly with our hero. She's curious about how Han has managed to tame her pet so easily. When he spots her, our boy asks if that wild creature is hers and says he's been watching her struggles for a bit. He suggests that her way of taming the beast isn't quite right. She looks a little lost and deflated. Our boy explains that getting too emotional only makes the beast more restless. She's taken aback and can't believe Han is actually giving her tips. As she thinks about what he just said, she can't help but remember that Ardell Academy is the best school in the whole empire. Adele's an Earth Mage and has always been one of the top 3 students there, even though she comes from a regular family and has had to deal with a lot of challenges. Her skills are pretty much off the charts, so it turns out that Adele ended up drawing the subject she totally struggles with for her lottery exams, Introduction to Basic Taming. She calls it bad luck, but deep down, she knows she is not good at taming. That is why she is putting in the practice. What really throws her off is Han. Last year, he could not even tame a slime, and she watched him fail right in front of her. People say he's really into black magic, and she thinks he's pretty moody and lost, but now he's somehow gotten her wild hellhound to chill out and even be all cuddly with him. She can't believe it and asks how he pulled that off. Han just says the beast is calm now, and it's hers again. She scoops it up and thanks him. Our boy asks her why she picked a hellhound since it's a tough choice for a first-time tamer. She proudly says that taking on a tricky monster like that means a lot to her, especially since it's her first go at it. She wants to show what she can do. Getting her point, our boy jokes that he thought she'd want something a bit easier, like a pet that enjoys mud baths or something chill. Getting annoyed at his teasing, she fires back and reminds him of his past flops. While she was busy taming her beast, Adele can't help but think about Han as he talks to her so easily, even though she's just a commoner and he's a noble. Her gaze shifts to the little dragon next to him. It's impressive that he's already managed to tame it, especially for a second-year student. Han seems like he's really changed. They head over to where the block slimes are, and Adele double-checks to make sure it's the right spot. Han suggested it so she could practice and bond with her beast. After he gives her the thumbs up, she dives in and starts clearing away vines and grass to reach the slimes. Han says he almost took them out before, but they keep popping back up. Adele tells him not to worry and that she'll take care of it. She asks him to give her a moment to get ready to deal with the slimes. The slimes attack the moment they spot her, but Adele takes them all out with one swing, leaving a huge mark behind. Han is impressed but can't resist teasing her, saying her technique looks like she's burying the slimes alive. Adele gets annoyed but acts like she's ignoring him. While a single slime is still hanging around, it suddenly moves to attack her. To her surprise, Han casts a spell at the slime out of nowhere. She's shocked because she totally remembers him not being able to use magic at all. Han then casually asks if she didn't notice the slime coming back for her. Still a bit stunned, she pretends like she was totally aware of the situation. As he starts to walk away, he comments that it's a relief if she knows what's going on, but as he strolls off, Adele realizes something. She actually didn't sense the slime creeping up from behind. Plus, she can see that Han's spell and magical arrow are way more accurate than she'd expect from someone just starting out. Their boy starts to say something, but he's interrupted when an unexpected error hits the dungeon, setting off an alarm that blares through the whole place. Both of them jump into action. He quickly asks her if she knows of anything that might have triggered it, but she's just as clueless. Meanwhile, a guy in the principal's office is telling the honorary principal that there's a situation in the training dungeon. The principal then asks what's going on inside and which students are in there. The guy fills him in about Han and Adele being around. The principal lets out a sigh and mentions that Han is nothing but trouble. He hints that losing Han wouldn't be a big deal, but when it comes to Adele, it's a whole different story. She's got talent and a bright future ahead, so her safety really matters. He points out that Han doesn't have any skills and is likely to struggle in such a dangerous dungeon. If there's a problem with the dungeon magic setup, the monsters can end up way bigger and a lot tougher than they normally are. He stresses that Han really doesn't stand a chance and suggests the staff get ready for what could happen. Back in the dungeon, Han and Adele are holding their own for now and manage to take down a bunch of slime monsters, but these things just keep coming, and it feels like they're never going to stop. Adele groans, saying the monsters are getting creepier, and this whole place feels like total hell. Frustrated, she shouts that the slimes won't quit showing up and swears she'll never look at a slime again. While she's freaking out, Han can't help but find it a bit funny. As he watches her, he notices that even though Adele looks totally worn out from the non-stop monster waves, she still seems to be holding it together surprisingly well. He thinks that even though her taming skills aren't the best, her sword fighting is just as good as the pros. It makes him wonder if she might be the Earth Mage who's set to become an awesome sorcerer. Still, it's pretty strange to see someone as tough as her hanging out in a beginner's training area like this. Earth Mages getting called Mage Swordsman isn't a big deal. Han's actually impressed by the girl's personality. She's got a bit of a temper, but she doesn't look down on him at all. While he's lost in his thoughts, Adele catches him slacking off and handling the monsters all on her own. She thinks he's kind of a creep and wants to know why he's just nodding to himself instead of jumping in to help. Han can't believe they've been stuck there for over 3 hours without a single word from the outside. He wonders if anyone even knows they're in trouble, which might explain why no one's come to help. She responds that it is what it is since only about 30 minutes have actually passed outside, so time moves slower in here. She looks at the whole mess as a chance for them to get in some extra training, trying to figure out why there's been no response yet. He says that even if they know what's going on and come to rescue them, they still have to last several hours. They need to hang in there and keep battling the slime monsters until help shows up, which feels pretty hopeless. When she hears Han's words, she gets mad and snaps at him for saying such negative stuff like they are just waiting around to die. Han responds with sarcasm and says he would never say something like that, clearly enjoying himself. As they argue, he tells her to buy him some time. She's confused and asks what he's up to, but Han just tells her she'll find out when the moment comes. He reminds her to keep the slime monsters at bay because he doesn't need long to do what he has to do. She freaks out a bit and asks why she has to handle it solo and what he's planning to do while she's on slime duty, but Han just brushes her off and jumps into his plan. Basil is feeling a bit anxious about Adele, but Han reassures him that he's got everything under control. As he walks along, he spots these glowing vines lighting up the area. He mentions he's read about them in the story and knows how to handle them. In the original novel, the Error Dungeon really emphasizes how different Han's abilities are compared to Han Sia. Han really struggled with this part of the dungeon before dealing with those annoying vines, but now he's stoked to find them and tells Basil to gather more. Basil looks around and then zips off to find the rest. While he waits, Han complains about how readers always criticize him for using this tactic and call him a loser and a bad guy. As he holds a unique vine, he mutters to himself that he does not deserve all that hate. Adele is holding her own against the slime, but she's starting to run low on mana. She's getting worried about why Han is taking so long and can't help cursing him a bit in frustration. Just then, Han bursts in, yelling that he is finished. Adele turns around and looks a bit puzzled when she sees him with those mysterious vines, as if he has built some kind of barricade. She motions for him to hurry inside, suggesting they keep it low-key since the slimes are bouncing back fast. But Han insists she get inside right away. He shares his idea of building a wall to hold them off and take out the monsters outside with some amplification magic and fire. He thinks he can stop the slimes from healing and make them vanish. He casts a spell and makes this big green arrow using arrow magic. Then he mentions that all that's left to do is light the arrows on fire. Turning to Basil, he says it's his turn now. Basil's eyes light up again as he sets the arrows ablaze. Han then shoots the flaming arrows out past their barricade. The slime monsters notice the glowing arrows, and out of nowhere, they blow themselves up in a huge explosion. Adele watches in awe as Han shows off his creation, struggling to wrap her head around the fact that this is really the Han she knows. The slimes are disappearing and not coming back, so she asks him how he managed that. Han explains that when he buried the slimes and spread their remains around, their poison would explode if fire magic touched it. She then wonders if he has a plan to keep the fire rain from getting through their barricade. Han nods and says that is a good point, but their barricade vines are special since they can withstand fire and will not burn. With everything ablaze around them, all they need to do now is wait for their rescue. Since things seem to be settling down, Han feels a bit of relief. Adele can't help but think about how unlikely it is that someone like him would actually save her. Nobles at Artel Academy usually ignore commoners, so she starts to wonder if Han has some hidden agenda. Meanwhile, Han is also puzzled by the way she's looking at him. He figures she'll thank him for saving her. Adele might come off as grumpy, but she's got a good heart and manages to say she's a bit grateful since he kind of saved her life. Han smiles and says that's great, then asks if she could do him a favor. Adele looks a bit worried, trying to guess what the favor might be. She thinks she will go for it if it is something simple, but she is not interested if it is something odd. Before she can finish her sure, here's your text with commas and full stops added without changing any words. Thoughts. Han asks her to keep everything under wraps, from taming the beast to catching the error slime and building the barricade. Adele figured out she was right about her guess, but something still felt off. She couldn't shake the feeling that Han was hiding something and thought he seemed a bit shady. As she watched him pick up some slime orbs, the whole dungeon cleanup part was pretty much brushed aside. The two professors were clearly baffled by the sudden mistakes, but decided to reward the students for handling things without anyone getting hurt too badly. Later, Han was summoned into the dean's office for a big reward. Sitting there, he looked relieved and mentioned that he understood the value of rewards, but that they were not really his thing. He was way more focused on getting stronger himself and helping his cute beast level up. With the dean away, Han and Basil are hanging out alone. Han checks on Basil and discovers he's a red dragon now. Basil's flamethrower skill leveled up, and he even got toxic resistance. After that dungeon glitch, Han is a bit puzzled about what the dark magician group is up to, but since Basil came from the basement, it is clear they are involved somehow. Han gives Basil some props for being a talented hatchling with serious growth and magic skills. He's determined to train him right, even if it takes a lot of work. Then he shows Basil a slime orb and explains it's a powerful item. He asks Basil if it looks tasty and jokingly suggests giving it a try. Basil looks a bit unsure, like he thinks it might be poisonous, even though the dragon is hesitant too. Han manages to persuade him to give it a shot by promising that it tastes amazing and that eating a couple won't hurt him. After some back and forth, Basil finally goes for it. Unfortunately, he ends up puking from the terrible taste, which Han admits he hasn't tried himself. Still, Han notices that Basil's magic power and resistance to toxins have actually gone up after munching on the orb. The slime orb really amps up your stats and even speeds up basic mana growth that usually takes forever. Basil notices the difference and gets totally hooked on the orbs. He just keeps eating them and his stats shoot up fast. Han's just chilling, watching all this go down, and feels pretty happy about it. Then, out of nowhere, Adele bursts in and says she has been searching everywhere for Basil and finally found him in the dean's office. She asks if he's seriously cool with her taking all the credit for handling the error slime, since that would make her way more famous and snag her some sweet rewards. Han scratches his head and says he doesn't really care, just asking her to keep it down since it's hurting his ears. He mentions that life is way more important than stuff, and warns that clearing the dungeon could draw the attention of the dark organization, putting him at risk. Plus, he doesn't want to be as famous as the protagonist. Adele responds, "If that's the case, you should just keep it to yourself, because I'm not looking for fame either." Han questions why she's being so sympathetic and bluntly tells her he doesn't need pity from someone he barely knows, asking her not to bring it up. Adele's fuming and wants to know how he's never heard of her. He throws in a sarcastic remark about why he should even care and asks for her name. When she says it's Adelia, his mouth drops open. He suddenly realizes she's the amazing magician from a regular background who's always in the top 3 at the Academy. The same girl who buries him alive in the story is now standing right there, asking if he knows her. He starts freaking out, thinking the person in front of him is going to kill him in the future. He feels like he's hit the jackpot of bad luck, running into her and can't stop overthinking, mumbling that this bad vibe is driving him nuts. Adele picks up on his panic and asks if he ever checks himself out in the mirror. She drags him over to one so he can see himself. She laughs and says she can't believe someone like him would show up at the dean's office just to grab something. When he sees his reflection for the first time since being brought back to life in Han's body, he's pretty shocked by how dirty and ragged he looks. It's hard to believe he doesn't resemble the handsome guy he thought he would. After realizing that people are not avoiding him out of fear, but because they cannot stand the sight of him, he decides to stay positive. He decides it is time to make some changes, starting with fixing his hair and cleaning himself up. The next day, our guy struts into the classroom like he owns the place. His classmates start whispering, with some thinking he is a new transfer because he looks so good, while others recognize him as Han, but cannot believe how different he is now. Now, as they gossip, he cracks a joke about being so good looking that everyone can't help but talk about him. One classmate even asks if he got some sort of makeover and wants to know his secret. Han could not believe that Crick, the annoying red-haired commoner, was trying to boss him around. Since Han was not the real one, he refused to let himself be pushed around. Crick kept mocking him and calling him a loser, but Han ignored it completely. Things took a turn when Crick started accusing him of losing it after getting a haircut. Han calmly told him to shut up or get shut down because he was over it. Crick argued that he had every right to talk, especially since Han's family had ditched him. Han shot back, telling Crick to quit pretending he was so tough. Just then, Basil popped out of Han's bag, radiating a serious vibe and an icy chill. The tension between them makes Han nervous, as his classmates are shocked by his beastly presence. Crick keeps mocking him, but our boy fires back and says it is a shame Crick picked the wrong guy to mess with. As Crick gets angrier, our hero smirks and enjoys watching him lose his cool. He turns the tables and says even a dragon hatchling can make a difference, because it is all about skill and not size. He warns Crick that if something happens to him, there is no coming back. Crick is super frustrated and tells our hero he needs to know his place. As Crick gets more annoyed, our boy decides to challenge him to wait for the exam results to see who's really the better one. Crick is totally caught off guard by this challenge. After class, our hero can't help but remember Crick's bold claim that he'd bark like a dog if he lost. Now all our hero has to do is sit tight and wait for that to go down. This reminds him of his old life, where he was known for being great at fixing his own messes, which is why people used to call him the scumbag. In turn, he always stood up against injustice and never let anyone beat him. Feeling proud of himself, he suddenly gets interrupted by his classmates. They ask if he is really planning to take down Crick this time, joking that he would be lucky just to pass. They laugh and ask how he even dares to challenge Crick in the exam, acting like he is kidding himself. They cannot wait to see him fail and bark like a dog. Our hero stays chill, thinking it's the same story everywhere. People like them just can't let others be, even when doing fine. He then looks over at a blonde guy and asks for his name. The blonde looks a bit nervous and wonders why it matters, but Han interrupts and insists he explains. The blonde doesn't have much choice, so he says his name is Edwin. When Han hears this, it clicks in his mind that Edwin is the arrogant prince who uses his status to boss around weaker people and is the leader of the bullies who have been messing with him. Without wasting any time, Han digs into his bag and pulls out his red dragon. As Han faces the fallout of his high score, the Academy buzzes with rumors. With rising attention, powerful rivals, and the Dark Magician group lurking, his journey is just beginning. Is he ready for what's next? Stay tuned for the next part. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more updates.